Hello, welcome to Fun2b Lecture 2. This is going to be the makeup material or the follow-up guide to the second week of classes. Today we're going to be looking at making functions, but not making functions in the way that we've done before. Up until this point, we've been only making functions that can do one thing. If you remember last week, we made a function that took a specific sprite and added it to a specific array list. But what if we wanted to have a function that could do more general tasks, that was more all-purpose? Well, we do have the ability to do that, and we can do that by using something called arguments. Now, in English, when you hear the word argument, you think of a fight, a verbal fight between two people. But in programming, an argument is a variable or some sort of information that you give to your function when you call it or when you use it inside of your program. We have to specify what kind of things a function can take, but once we do that, we can use those things inside the function. So let's try making a very simple one. Let's try making a simple math function. So I'm going to go to global, I'm going to grab just a void setup and my global variables, although I don't even think we need the global variables. And then I'm also going to go into my void function input block. So this looks a bit like the function block that we're used to, but it has this input section here at the end. And this is where we're going to put the kind of information this function expects to get. So I'm going to call this function print max. And I want this function to take in two integers and and print out the larger of the two. So first of all, I have to go to the input section, and I have to tell it that it's going to expect two numbers. So I'm going to do that by saying int for integer a and int b. So I first have to specify what kind of variable it's going to be expecting. In this case, we want it to expect an integer, well actually two integers, and I'm just going to name them a and b. When I call the function, I can use any number I want in place of these, but as far as the function is concerned, it's going to refer to them as a and b. We can't really predict what we're going to call the variables when we give it to the function, so instead we're just going to make up generic names for it. So I'm just using, again, a and b. So now, inside the function, I want to compare a to b and print out the larger of the two. And this should be pretty trivial for you guys at this point. You should know how to compare variables. I'll go to conditionals, I'll grab an if statement, and I'm going to say if a is greater than b, then we're going to go to shapes, and we're going to grab the print line block, and I'm going to say print line a. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say grab the else block and attach it to the if. So now it says if a is greater than b, print line a. Otherwise, I want you to print line b. Done. All right, so my function print max is done. It's not a very difficult function. It's not really a necessary function, but we can definitely test it out. So let's give it a go and see how it works. So in my void setup, I'm just going to go back to globals, scroll all the way to the bottom and grab this function input block. And I'm going to type out print max. And then for the input, I told it I needed to give it two integers. So let's just give it two integers. I'm just going to give it like 6, 8. So I gave it two numbers, 6 and 8, separated by a comma. Very important that we separate with a comma. So now when I run this, you'll see down here in my console box, it'll print out 8, because 8 is the larger of the two. And I can put out any two numbers. I can do 1000 or 1009, comma, and 3,259,421. And I can run this, and it's going to compare the two, and it's going to say, hey, that 3,259,421, that is the larger of the two numbers, so it can compare it for us. So that's our first function, done and done. So let's quickly have a look at our p-sets and see what other functions we wanted to make. So I'm going to go to open a new coder, and I'm going to go to my p-sets, and I'm going to go to Fun2b. We're going to go to classwork week 2. Here it is. Let's go to make more functions. So now that we've done the first function, let's try making another one. This time, let's make one that takes in 3 numbers and prints the average of all 3 numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and make that. So I'm going to go back to globals. I'm going to grab a new function, void function input, and this one's going to be called print avg3, print average 3. And it's going to take in an int called a, an int called b, and an int called c. And I wanted to print the average of all 3 of these. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and, if I wanted to, I could do it. I'll show you guys the long way, but the clearer way first, and then we'll do it the easy way. So I'm going to go to variables, and I'm going to grab integer x, and we can just leave it x, doesn't really matter. And this is going to equal a plus b plus c. And then I'm going to go to shapes, and I'm going to grab the print line, and I'm just going to have it print out x divided by 3.0. The 0.0 is important because that's just going to allow it to become a float. So now I'm going to go back to my setup. I'm going to make another new function call. This one's going to be print avg3, print the average of 3 numbers. Let's just pick some easy ones. Let's pick 5, 7, and 9, or 5, 7, and 10, let's say. So I'm going to run this, and it should be about like 7.5, 7 1/3. There we go. Perfect. I can go ahead and do bigger numbers. I can do like 103, 5,236, and 7. And I have no idea what this is going to be. Something like 2,000, no, 1,000. There we go. Actually came out to a whole number. That's pretty cool. Wasn't expecting that. Let's try changing this to an 8. Let's see if I can get a decimal. There we go. Got me a decimal. Cool. So that's how to print the average of 3 numbers. So again, I specified the types of variables the function needs, 3 integers. I gave it a name, print avg3, and then just inside that function, I told it what to do with those 3 numbers, a, b, and c. We don't have to only use literals here. I could go to my variables and I could make a couple integers. I'll call this one var1. I'll call this one var2, and I'll make this one 55, and I'll make this one 905. And now down here I can have print the average of var1, var2, and 47. So I'm mixing variables and literals, but it'll still work just fine. It'll still print out the average, which is 335.6. Repeating. All right, so let's look at another one of our examples and just keep working through this. So a function that rounds a float to the nearest whole number. We're going to do this one. I know I skipped this one. That's okay. This one's not too hard. So a function that takes in a float and rounds it to the nearest whole number. So let's make another function. I'm just going to duplicate this again. And this one I'm going to call print round. And this is going to take in a float called a. I'm going to delete all this. So I'm going to go and grab a new float, and I'm going to say float y equals a plus 0.5. And then I'm going to go to shapes, and I'm going to print line. This one was a little bit mean, which is why I'm showing you how to do it now. It involves something called casting. You guys don't really need to know how to do that. I'm going to say int of y. So when I run this, oh, I need to actually, no, it doesn't like that for some reason. Why give me an error that you shouldn't get an error? Print round, float a plus 0.5, and then we're going to cast the int of y. Let's try calling it. I might have made a mistake here. Let's do print round, and we're just going to give it 3.4, and this should hopefully, doesn't like that for some reason. Float y. Spelling float correctly. let's just try something a little bit differently. I'm going to delete that. I'm just going to say print the integer value of a plus 0.5. Maybe I'll do 0.5 just to be clear. All right, so it rounds it to 3. 3.4 should round to 3. And if I do 3.7, it should round to 4. And let's see. Sure enough, it rounded to 4. So don't worry about understanding this one too much. I picked this one a little bit. It's a little bit harder than your average one. Let's try one more together, and then I'll leave the rest of you guys for homework. Let's do a function that takes in a string and adds a word to the end of it. So I'll make another function. I can just go ahead and collapse these guys for now. Collapse, 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 collapse. Okay, so I'm going to make another new function. Go down here, grab a void function. And I'm going to call this function add my name. And it's going to take in a string called text. And in this function, we're just going to say print line text plus Alan. So if I go ahead and call this function, I'll go ahead and just duplicate this. This one's going to be called add my name, and I'm going to give it this person is cool, colon. So now when I run this, it'll take the string this person is cool, and it will add the word Alan to the end of it. I could say also this guy is butts. And see if it runs. Come on. This guy is butts. Alan. Alan is butts. Oh no. And I can make a constant variable. I can just make a string up here. I'll make a string called word, and I'll just have this be in quotes, awesome sauce to the max. And now we're just going to pass this function, the function or the variable word, and it'll say awesome sauce to the max, Alan. So there we go. We've gone through 4 different functions. They're all pretty simple at this point. We're going to start learning how to make slightly more complex ones as the class continues. But I just want you guys to get comfortable with the idea of taking functions and adding inputs to them, or arguments. So go ahead and go to your pset, look through it, try some of the other ones. Mostly should be pretty straightforward. The last one, super strong bonus credit. Make a function that takes in a number and prints out if that number is prime or not. That's a real tough one. You guys may need to do a little bit of research online to figure out how to properly do that. But if you can do it, super awesome cookie points for you. If somebody can actually make a function that does that in Java blocks, I don't know what I'll do, but it'll be something really cool to sort of celebrate and applaud you. Anyways, that's it for today. Practice with these. What I'd recommend is just every day going into Java blocks and making a new function that takes inputs. It can do any silly thing you want. You can have it be something that combines 2 strings together. It can be something that will take a number and multiply it by 10 million and see what you get. Just practice with different inputs and different outputs and see what comes up. All right, well, that's it for today. Thanks, everyone. Bye.